All right, guys and gals, GregaMortis here from Land of the Creeps, and I'm super excited. I have a special guest on this show right here tonight, and it's Mr. David Gregory, co-founder of Severin Films, as well as the CEO of Severin Films. Welcome, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I should call you Sir Gregory. I feel like you're like
I'm not a big fan of the monarchy. I don't think that'll work for me.
it don't work. Here's the thing: you're single-handedly making me go to the poorhouse.
Hey, well, it's going towards a good cause, believe me.
Hey, absolutely. But we're super excited tonight. The main purpose of tonight is we're going to be talking about the Vixen Trilogy that just released recently. I have the discs in my hand here. We'll talk about them here shortly. But I think we should go ahead and introduce you, Mr. Gregory, like let the people know that may not know you exactly who you are and how you Severin Films got started.
Well, Severin Films has been around since 2006, so it's our 20th anniversary next year. And I actually was working for other labels before I started Severin. I started with Anchor Bay when I first came over to the US doing extras for Bill Lustig, and then went with Bill Lustig when he started Blue Underground. For the first few years of Blue Underground, I was working with him. And then me, John Cregan, and my old school friend Carl Daft decided we'd start our own label, which is Severin Films. And now, however many hundreds of films we've licensed since, here we are, and no sign of slowing down, thankfully.
I'm super thankful too because the releases that you have been putting out, even I mean early on, but in 2024 alone, what you put out, the content has been insane. Like literally the opera from Dario Argento, that box set
Yeah.
was mind blowing. That was my favorite release of any 2024 release. Is that was just beautiful. And
I'm glad to hear it. We put a lot of work and a lot of money into not just restoring the film, but creating the whole package.
yeah, like literally, I have my sunglasses right here on the shelf, and I still got my shirt. Not actually wearing the, of course, the slave. I had to do the cannibal films, but super excited to have you on tonight. But the movies we're talking about, man, we're talking about the Vixen trilogy, right? So we had Vixen one, which was what 1968, and then we
Yeah.
had, of course, Super Vixen, which is my favorite, by the way, of the three. We got Super Vixen 75, and then 78's Beneath the Valley of the Super Vixen. These films, I
Ultra,
what's yeah,
yeah.
Ultra Vixen. I'm sorry, Ultra Vixen. I
Yeah.
got to ask you, like, where did this all begin? How did we get into Russ Myers? Where did that come about?
Well, we've been trying to get Russ Meyer's films before, like for years. Like even before Severin even begun, I was kind of involved with other labels who were trying to get the films to actually upgrade them for DVD back then. But the Russ was deteriorating, his health and his mental health was deteriorating then. So nothing really happened except kind of some basic DVDs were put out officially by the Russ Meyer Trust.
Mm-hmm.
But they were taken from the old video masters, which Russ had created in the early 80s. Basically, so they were state of the art in the early 80s when he was distributing his own VHS and beta tapes of his movies. But technology has moved on quite a bit since then, and the estate, the trust, the Russ Meyer Trust, have just been kind of figuring out what to do with the films, and eventually we were able to come to an agreement with them to release five of them, and this is the first three.
So we know we got two more coming soon,
Yes,
hopefully.
which will be announced actually next week.
Oh, see, I was super excited. That was going to be one of my questions because there's several Russ Myers films I really am hoping come to
Yeah.
light, fruition, if you say. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you're in the hunt for getting more. I'm sure.
Yeah, so we hope so. I mean, basically, this was kind of the trial run with these ones to see how we all got along and how the workflow went and all that kind of thing. And so far so good. I mean, we've got along great with Janice from the Trust and working together on making sure that these films are immaculate, in their presentation. I mean, we've gone to bigger lengths with the restoration of these than we do on some of our films, because they really are, they really are American cinema classics, and really need to be, seeing as they've been out of circulation forever. I mean, I would argue that they have never had like a proper home video release. Of course, at the time in the 80s, it was state of the art, as I said. But I think now is the first time that you can actually see them looking the way that they should have looked, being scanned from the original negatives and presented in their original aspect ratios.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing. The picture quality in these films are stunning. Like just the Blu-ray alone looks crystal clear. I can only imagine 4K, of course, looking even better. I was
They
just
do.
shocked.
They're absolutely eye-popping.
Yeah.
And sitting with Janice from the Trust and watching them is
Yeah.
it has been well, it's funny in some parts, as we're commenting on the films as we're going on about his Russ's bawdy humor and his outlook on and his attitude to sex and life in general and American life in particular has been extremely enjoyable. But the bottom line is just seeing these films, in that kind of clarity, has been a real joy.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm hoping she does see that us fans are like just blown away. Like you have treated these movies as good as anything could be treated. And I'm actually shocked because these movies were in obscurity, right? Like if you had a VHS, you were doing great. And I was just
Yeah, they
wondering,
said they weren't back in the 80s and the 90s. They were everywhere because Russ was distributing them himself, and they were, in virtually every video store had some Russ Meyer movies in their famous famous red cases that he designed. But it was after that they fell into, they even came out on Laserdisc, but again using those same standard definition old transfers from the 80s.
Mhm.
So they've been out of circulation since then simply because Russ, got sick, and since then they just haven't really known what to do with the films, or maybe they knew what to do with the films, they just hadn't found the right home for them.
I feel like they found the right home now. So, I mean, we
I
still
hope,
have,
I'm happy to hear that, and we
yeah,
hope they feel the same.
there's so many like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. There's so many movies that that he had done that I really want to see, and I'm excited. I'm super excited for where it's going. But let's look into the actual releases. The first one being Vixen. I just really I had never seen any of these, honestly, David, until this release. So sat and my wife and I popped it in the Blu-ray player and I started watching. My mind is just going in a million directions. I'm like, what am I having in front of me? I mean, it was such comfort food. It was glorious, but the picture quality. But I'm sitting here watching, like, first thing you see is Erica Gavin looking
Yes.
stunningly beautiful in HD quality, right? And then I'm
Yeah.
watching the movie progress and I'm like, wow, like, the world needs to see this. Like, I'm glad you guys have gotten a hold of this. I'm glad that you are treating it like it is because this is cinema, man. This is fun.
Absolutely is, and I'm not being facetious when I say he's one of the most important, genuine American independent filmmakers that there is, and arguably the independent filmmaker because he basically did everything.
Yeah.
Right from the development stage through to distribution. Not many independent filmmakers can say that they wore so many hats on and had so much control over their work, with the exception of the films that he did for studios.
Right. I know I've heard you. I listened to the Severin Film podcast, by the way. And listeners, listen to Severin Films podcast. You'll absolutely love it when you release episodes. But I know y'all had mentioned about how that back in the day you could get VHS or get movies from Russ himself, be invited to the
Yeah.
home. You walk Can you talk a little bit about that? Were you one of the lucky ones that actually got to go into the Russ Myers home back in the day and say, "Hey, I want a copy of
I,
this"?
I never did it back in the day. I remember the company that I worked for, a video distributor I worked for in England back in the 90s, right after I got out of school. I remember the boss there telling me how he called the number up on the back of the VHSs that are over here, and was surprised that Russ was the one who actually picked up the phone. And Severin co-founder John Cregan, who was a big Russ Meyer fan, he also just called that number when he was a teenager, just to speak to his hero Russ. And Russ, in his kind of gruff but encouraging way, just gave him some words of encouragement about wanting to be in the film industry, and it meant a lot to him.
Wow.
But no, I didn't get to go to the Maya house until recently, long after Russ had passed away. But I'd seen it in the Incredibly Strange Film Show, which is included on the Super Vixens disc.
Mm.
And just that kind of museum of plaques that he had, of memorabilia from his entire career, some of which now are adorning my office wall. But a lot of that had been taken down,
Mhm.
even though you could see the layout of the place was obviously the same. But
Right.
that stuff was taken down on the advice of the nurses when he was deteriorating. That that much stimulus actually is not good for him.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of it was actually in a was in a room at the back. So then we've taken a lot of those out, and at some point we'll be doing an auction for the pieces that are left. All like one of a kind, unique pieces that he used to have on his
Yeah.
wall, his home museum.
That's so cool. It had to be so surreal to walk into that room and just see, the allness of what was going on.
Yeah, well, of course, and that's where he ran the business out of, and that's where he would take those phone calls. That's where he would ship the tapes. There was still a lot of the wraps for the VHS tapes was still stacked. So we managed to get some of those to give in the bundles for people who buy from us directly.
See, that's the way to do it, man. I'm telling you. Here with Vixen, I got to say, Vixen, awesome movie. I'm gonna be honest, man. The special features that you guys did for this one, first of all, being the archival commentary with Russ Meyer himself, I thought was brilliant. Like, just to be able to watch a movie and hear Russ talking in your ear, it's so freaking
Yeah.
cool. And even though it's
And he was in like proper gruff Russ mode at that point, so he's giving you just kind of the bare minimum, but you do feel like you're hearing it, you're sitting and watching it with him, which is really nice.
exactly. And then you brought in Erica Gavin to bring in the commentary, which I thought was spot on. Like, she was very candid.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful lady even today, man. And I'm just like blown away listening to her talk about the movie, and you can hear the excitement in her, like watching the movie over. Now, who
Yeah,
was
yeah.
part of that?
Erica's fantastic. And Erica said, so we did some extras back for the Arrow DVDs, which came out in like 2005 or so. And so we had interviewed quite a few people for those. And unfortunately, most of them are now gone. I mean, we did do the Faster Pussycat piece with Haji and Tora Satana and Susan Bernard, who are all now no longer with us. Laurie Williams is still around, but and then Charles Napier, who's on the Super Vixens disc as well, no longer with us. He got his start with Russ Meyer.
Right.
And those were at that particular interview we'd shot for Arrow, but never edited because Arrow decided they didn't want it in the end. But we did edit that piece with Erica Gavin and Harrison Page for Vixen back for the DVD, which we've also included here. But Erica and I got along well, so it just made sense to do a new commentary with her. And as you hear, she's not afraid to tell her recollections, warts and all.
She's very candid. And but I appreciate that.
Shy. Yeah.
So then you go from there, and then you have the what was the other? You had the will there be no, what, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Look right here, Greg. No, you had another the other, no, man, see here, I'm fumbling around there.
You
The
mean the piece with Mark Hoyk about the Cincinnati ban on,
yes, that,
yeah.
thank you, because that was what I meant to mention. I feel like it's such a goofus.
Yeah, no, that piece is great. And I think that came about at the suggestion of Mark, the guy who talks about it, because he's a film archivist and former projectionist, and he actually in his collection had that print that was confiscated by the police from that theater in Cincinnati. And so we built Andrew Furtado, who you'll have heard on the podcast with me, who's our post supervisor and really the savior of so many of our it keeps us sane, let's just say, because it manages to manage all the pieces that come in for all our various releases, which is a huge amount of stuff. So, Andrew is, I can't speak enough about how important Andrew is to Severin and what we do. But he directed that one, and he put that together with Mark, and I think he did a fantastic job.
He really
It's
did.
a fascinating story, and it's still banned to this day in Cincinnati. We're actually working on getting the first ever legal screening going in Cincinnati.
That's crazy. I hope it happens, but such a great 13 minutes, 34-second interview on that thing that was awesome.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
really good. But I think my favorite was the David DeVille, The Sinister Image. I
Yes.
really enjoyed that feature on here. I thought that was really, really
Yeah.
eye-opening and enjoyable.
Also, it's really fortunate that people like David Delval, who've worked with on many discs before, and he's a friend of the company, and somebody who's been a collector of horror and cult movies memorabilia for years. But he was also, he did his own public access cable show, which was short-lived, unfortunately. But one of the guests was Russ Meyer, and he still kept the footage. So, for us, that's essential that we get things like that. Because there is no more Russ, so you couldn't get that otherwise. We also got that one from Beneath the Valley, the ultra-vixens, which was on a show in Tucson, Arizona. And the lady who interviewed him in Tucson, Arizona, who's now an elderly lady, she came to the office, to the Severin office, to talk about, having Russ on as a guest, and how kind of progressive her talk show was, that she would have, guests on who would talk about sex and sex films and prostitution and things like that. So she talks all about that, and then very specifically talks about Russ, including one just hilarious story she tells. You do not expect this little old lady to uh, come out with the verbiage that she does.
It was amazing. Ellen Adelstein or Adelstein. And
Yeah,
when she says,
right.
started laughing so hard because of we know what happens in that moment that they're showing on the teaser trailer.
Yeah.
I cracked up watching the special feature. I just burst out laughing, thinking, "Wow, that was hilarious." But I think
we also had the Incredibly Strange Film Show as well, which was an essential at the time. It was an essential way to actually learn about filmmakers like this, because there really wasn't that much in terms of like video documentaries about people like Russ Meyer at that time. And the Incredibly Strange Film Show ran for 2 seasons, and a third season had a different title. But people like John Waters, Ray Dennis Steckler, Ted V. Mickles, Ed Wood, Jackie Chan, even back then wasn't as well known as he is now. So there were episodes on these people, and so that was really where I learned. I already knew, and I think I'd already seen Faster Pussycat Kill Kill when that episode aired, but that's when I got to learn about who Russ was and actually hear him speak. And so to have that, to be able to license that episode of that groundbreaking show was also a pretty big deal for us.
Yeah, and it's an awesome feature for sure. So Vixens, great. Super Vixens, like I said, was my favorite because of Charles Napier, and it was very, very violent. Like it's a violent adult fun film. I guess can you say that, like a violent adult fun film?
I mean, kind of, because I mean, obviously he's influenced by Looney Tunes. I mean, there's so much dynamite and in the desert, and the quick cutting and the sound effects. I mean, he's definitely going for cartoonish.
Right.
It definitely, I would say it certainly by today's standards, it crosses certain lines that you wouldn't get away with now.
Yeah.
But all of his films kind of do that, and I don't think that's a reason to not like them. I mean, they're definitely up for discussion and are a product of their time. But I mean, I think more importantly, these are very important American films.
They truly are. And Shari Eubank looked stunning in the movie. So, of course, haven't heard, but the special feature where you had the archival interview with Charles Napier
Yeah.
is worth all three of these movies by itself. That one interview was just mind blowing how candid and open he was. And That's my favorite feature of the whole trilogy.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the fact that that had sat on our shelf unedited for, almost 2 decades, was great that we were able to actually, dust that off and finally get it out because he obviously we all know Charles Napier for the character actor he became in some huge, huge movies. But really he got his big break from working with Russ, and he admits that in the piece. We actually have another actor, and one of the ones we're announcing next week, also now deceased, who also talks about how, he got into movies because of Russ.
I'm super excited. I can't wait for the release because I know I will be purchasing for sure. I'd actually just got this in the mail today, the Ed Wood collection. That
Oh, wow.
just
That
literally.
also has an incredibly strange film show on it as well. I mean, that's that one, those movies, the hardwood films. I mean, that Ed Wood was, like it or not, he was making adult films at the end of his career, and they are very Ed Wood. And so, if you're an Ed Wood aficionado, it's a great set to get. I mean, it's as Amy, who works here,
Yeah.
also an essential part of the team. She loves depressing porn, and that's kind of what they are. And But again, the special features disc is not to be missed on that, because we've got the Incredibly Strange Film Show, but also, Dana Gould and Bobcat Goldthwait they're huge, huge fans of Ed Wood. I mean,
Mhm.
Bobcat has like a tattoo of Ed Wood, so it's the two of them, both very funny men, talking about their love of Ed Wood is pretty great.
I can't wait to crack into that one. Beneath on the Ultra Vixens, man, what an outstandingly funny movie that just really is insane, right? This movie is the one that is the wildest, in my opinion, the wildest. The story being, the lead character can't have normal sex. He has to go through maybe a little bit less of the right way, right? He wants, let's just go back door. We'll keep it clean. But man, that movie was so fun. So fun. And
And
I
it's the last movie that Russ completed, certainly on film. And he was really still he was still kind of at his peak of his powers, but just stopped making feature films. I mean, the drive-in market probably died down, or whatever it was that made him stop doing it. Video market came in. He certainly made a fortune during the video era, so maybe he just concentrated on that. But beneath it even promises more to come
mm,
at the end. But that's the end of the line. And funnily enough, that was the one that well, not funny at all, but that was the one where the negative was actually quite damaged, so we had to do extra restoration on that. And I think the point that we got it to actually is almost as good as Super Vixens and Vixen.
oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, there's no complaints at all on picture quality. And the interview you had with Kitten Natavina on it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
now you talk about
Talk
being
about
candid.
somebody who's uninhibited. That yeah,
She beats around no bush. She lets it
yeah,
happen. And I loved her. We know that if you'll listen to the interview, and I want all you to definitely pick up the movie and check out the interview, but you'll hear her talking about her time with Russ. She was married with him for what, 5 years, I believe.
yeah. Well, they were together. I don't think they were ever married, but
Oh,
yeah, they were a couple for 5 years and stayed close for the rest of his life.
that's awesome. So all these interviews, all these special features that are on this movies right here are phenomenal. I'm telling you, y'all went all out. I love that you kept the kind of like the VHS. I see your VHS behind you and how y'all kept it kind of just like the VHS release. I love that. I thought it
Yeah,
was
it was
really
there was no other way as far as we were concerned. That was something that the Maya Trust were wanted to make sure that that it was contractual, essentially, that we kept his graphic design sense, and that was no problem for us. We love the way these movies look. The way he marketed these films was, the Russ Meyer way. So
yeah.
want to stay to that.
Is there anything that you would have done different or anything you would have put more on here if you could have, time constraint or whatever?
I wish there was more people still alive who were there, making the movies, but there aren't, and that's the struggle with the older these films get, the less likely you're going to be able to find people who are lucid enough to talk about them. But I think what we got what we could, and also the fact that there were archival interviews with Russ, and that's important to us. So yeah, no, I think there's we we do generally do a lot of extras on our discs. So, these might seem that it's like not as much as we would usually do, but I don't know. It's like compared to, most other labels, that's still a pretty substantial slate of extras, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm thoroughly enjoying all of them. I've seen all the commentary or listened to all the commentary, seen all the special features, and the I think you've done a bang up job. I'm sitting
Thank
there
you.
like, man, these things look as beautiful as they could ever look. So I'm highly recommending these. Once again, it's Vixen, Super Vixens, and then you got Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens. Man, I'm telling you, these three films, watch them because I really know that the painstake that y'all took to make these come out is so worth it. And if you don't know who Russ Meyer is, you can definitely watch these movies and listen to his commentary, see some of the interviews, and get a taste of them. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And people know him now mostly for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is one of the two studio pictures he did.
Mm.
But honestly, I think as much as I enjoy that movie, these are much more pure Russ Meyer.
Yeah. So do you feel like, I know you got five, you got two more coming out, you done announced. So we can't say that, I'm sure, on air, but you'll find out. Stay tuned next week. You're going
Next Monday. Yeah, exactly. Stay tuned to the Severin Films social media and website.
I cannot wait for that. So your hopes are, how many more you want? Like, can you let it out of the bag? Is
Oh,
there like,
we want to do them all, but we only have five actually locked in at this point. So
okay.
two that we announce next week, that's it as far as what we've actually signed for at this point.
Well, good. I hope it comes out, man. I cannot wait, dude. I'm so excited. So let me ask you this now. What is your holy grail? What is that one white whale film that you got left that you haven't released yet? Do you still have one that's just eluding you? Or do you feel like you've kind of accomplished what you set out to do thus far?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be Blood for Dracula, but we got that thanks to our friends at Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think what else it would be? I mean, I suppose Faster Pussycat Kill Kill would be one of them, but that I can assure you that's not in the next two.
Right.
So, but there are others. I mean, there are plenty of films which are still, in need of unearthing and
Sure.
releasing. So, we've got an enormous slate of films. The biggest problem that we have is actually getting them to the finish line because there's so many, not just the restoration of the films themselves or getting the elements scanned in other countries.
Mm.
Once you've done that, there's still a bunch of extras that have to be produced, and they're small kind of, movies of their own,
Right.
and we like to do them well. So it becomes like a big every release is kind of a big project.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, how long did it take you to do like each film? Is there a way to really narrow that down? Like just say for Vic.
In general,
Yeah.
not really, because I mean, some of them we can turn around very quickly. Like if, for example, there's one studio that we license films from, and they actually deliver a very good final master as part of the deal. So those we can generally turn around much quicker. But that's not more often than not, that's not the case. We have to sometimes we even have to find the elements because the owner of the film doesn't know where the negatives are or a decent print is. And so it's up to us to find an element and then scan it and restore it and do the color correction on it. So that all takes time. And then we have to, or usually concurrently, we're working on the extras and shooting people wherever they may be around the world. Thankfully, there's enough people who do this in every territory that, if we've got somebody in some strange part of the world where we're not going to fly for one interview.
Right.
I mean, it may not be strange. They might be in Sydney, Australia, for example, as was the case with an interview we just did. But we've got somebody in Sydney, Australia, who can coordinate and shoot that interview for us.
That's good.
Yeah. Oh, I will say that there's several films that the rights is not the issue. It's finding a decent film element. So the regional slasher film Unhinged from Portland, Oregon, is one that we cannot find even a release print. So the best possible master at the moment is a commercially released VHS tape.
Mm.
So and that's obviously not good enough for Blu-ray.
Right.
So we're still on the hunt for that, but it's not looking good.
Well, let's hope it just pops up in somebody's garage somewhere in a trunk of a car or something. They're out there somewhere. It's got to be, man. Let's pray for that.
Yeah,
So,
there's another one from the Earl Owensby Studios, a 3D movie directed by Worth Keeter called Hot Air, which again, that nothing exists on this film, so it's on the verge of being a lost film.
oh my God. I'm so excited for people like yourself, companies that are saving these films from obscurity, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of films are doing this. A lot of films are fading away, they're deteriorating, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
man, I'm super excited for Severin Films and for your company, what you're doing, because you are bringing us films. I mean, as much as like, of course, Hardwood. I mean, who would have ever thought Hardwood would be coming out? The
You didn't
Great
even know
Alligator.
you wanted it, but now you have it.
And here it is. I mean, The Great Alligator you released this year. I mean, these films like this that are just mind blowing to me. Slave of the Cannibal God, Eaten Alive, all these movies that you're releasing. I just want to say a big, huge thank you for doing what you do, and your partners and your team. You got a great team behind you. The podcast that you're part of. I mean, the podcast is amazing. Every time you do a good release, you come out with this just amazing podcast episode that's so, I just absolutely love it. And then you got the music at the end of it, which I think is a great, just little added feature to each show. So, man,
Yeah. No, I highly recommend people subscribe to the podcast, because that's really where all the new announcements. It's not just the new announcements might drop in terms of the specs and the cover, but it's through the podcast that you get to learn a bit more about what went into actually bringing these to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to hear Amy talk about how that Super Vixens just some of the things.
Yeah. She got very emotional talking about Russ Meyer, which quite right. As she said, I think she said something like, I get very emotional about great art, and you can't fault that.
That is great. So once again, listeners, definitely get your hands on severinfilms.com. Get your hand on Vixens. Get the Super Vixens. I'm telling you, my favorite of the trilogy right there. It's gold. And then, of course, Beneath the Valley of the ultra-vixens. Man, all three of those are classics. Must own, part of the Bosom Mania line, I guess you would call it there, Russ Meyer's. I actually picked this up too, and I'll do this real quick because I know you got to go. But I picked up this book here, which is Big Bosoms and Square Jaws.
Yes.
I think just to read more about Russ Meyer's.
Yep, that's Jimmy McDonough's book, the same guy who wrote the ghastly one about Andy Milligan. So it's full of salacious stories and all kinds of information, about very deeply researched information about his life and career.
Absolutely.
You can also do worse than getting A Clean Breast, which is Russ's 3-volume autobiography. It's massive, but it's also extremely expensive. It's very hard to find a copy now.
A Clean Breast. I will definitely search it out because I definitely got to get it. So this has been amazing having you online, and I want everybody definitely, once again, severinfilms.com. But do you got anything that you want to plug, or any outlets that you would like to press right now for the listeners?
I mean, I would just say keep your eye on and follow Severin Films on Facebook, Instagram, and the website severinfilms.com. Twice a year we do a sale, so some of the older titles you can get much cheaper than they are the rest of the year, but that's also when we drop like 10 new releases as well, so that's kind of the most exciting time of the year for us. But yeah, just keep an eye on our social media, because we have new stuff coming out every month.
Nice. Do this, man. So Mr. Gregory, it's been freaking awesome having you on here. Can't wait to talk to you again, hopefully in the future, but definitely get a hold of these Vixen trilogies, get a hold of the Hardwood, the Ed Wood adult film collection there. You won't go wrong. And good Lord, I ain't even going to go through it. Go to the catalog, go to severinfilms.com, look at the catalog, and you break them down by years. It'll blow your mind, the movies being released. So we're going to hop off here. Mr. Gregory, love the backdrop of the VHS, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
All right.